everyone. Let's just say the blessing and then we can start. Blessed are you, Adonai, King of the universe. It is the Torah of truth, the good news of salvation, to Israel and to all people, to his Son Yeshua, the Messiah, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so today we're going to, I think a lot of you here are quite acquainted with what we're going to talk about. Some of you, maybe not so much. So we'll be discussing, did the disciples follow Torah? But it's it's linked to clean and unclean. And, the laws that God requires us to follow. So it's going to be, let's see how it goes. Torah of truth because that's what it is. So I just want to start off with keeping Torah and eating kosher, which means fit or proper, very much linked. And I think the first place we start seeing this, before I get to the disciples keep Torah, I want to just kind of a little bit of a background. So if we go to Genesis chapter 7, verse 2. God instructs here, he says, you shall take with you 7, each of every clean animal, a male and his female, 2 each of animals that are unclean, a male and his female. So 7 of every clean, 2 of every unclean. Here really we see God makes a distinction. A lot of people say no, the Torah was only given at Sinai. Before then, people didn't follow the commandments and so on. But firstly, we see in Genesis 1, where God rested, he gave a Shabbat. We see later on God talking about clean and unclean. And this is the theme throughout, because God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And it's always been like that. If we go to okay. Often the discussion is, the debate is, Yeshua came to do away with Torah. Came to do away with it so we don't have to keep it. Can I ask, what would the point of doing away with Torah be?
What? So that people can actually do it their way.
Okay. What was the point of Yeshua coming?
To be forced to do it.
To offer salvation.
Okay.
Yes.
So he is the Word. But the first thing I would ask, if we're going to argue the point, Yeshua came to do away with the Torah, or let's just call it as I said, Old Testament. How do we back that up? If that was actually the fact, let's say it was the fact, he was coming to do away with the Old Testament. How would we back that up?
You have to misrepresent what Paul wrote.
Or we'd have to go, is there prophecy that backs it up? Does the word talk about the Messiah coming to do away with that? I can't find anywhere where you could make that argument. That the Messiah is coming to take away what God gave as a gift, as a way of life to keep as a blessing. We can't make that justification anyway. If you can turn to Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53 is a beautiful passage that talks about the Messiah and his purpose. And I think for us to have understanding, because most people don't realize or really understand the loss of what did Yeshua come to really do. He came to bring salvation, yes. What was the whole plan? Isaiah 53 really is a nice chapter to read and see the nature of the Messiah, Yeshua. So it says, who has believed our report? To whom has the arm of God been revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He has no form of comeliness, and when we see him, he has no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray, we have turned every one to his own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who will declare his generation? For he was cut off from the land of the living, for the transgressions of many people. He was stricken, and they made his grave of the wicked, with the rich of his dead, because he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him; he has put him to grief. When you make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasures of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. He shall see the labor of his soul, and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant shall justify many, for he shall bear the iniquities. Therefore, I will divide him a portion with the great, and he shall deliver the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bore the sins of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. It's a beautiful chapter to see what his purpose was, but also prophecy of what was going to happen. If you really want to look at, a piece of scripture where, often the Jewish people will say, no, this isn't the Messiah, because the Messiah came to rule as a conquering king. That was not his purpose. He is ruling, and he did conquer. He conquered something no one else could, no man could. He conquered death. And nowhere here where you see, I've come to take away my Father's word. You see the main purpose of him coming to bring salvation. Salvation, and this leads us to an important point. What was the point of Torah? Because many people will say, "Oh, you cannot earn salvation." What was the point of Torah?
Show us God's standards compared to ours, the way how we should.
The first thing is, Torah was never given for salvation. It's not the purpose of Torah. That's why there was a sin offering. If you could earn salvation, then what would the point be of the sacrifice? What would the point be of the Messiah coming? The Torah was given for you as a blessing to live life to its fullest, to live a healthy life, to live a life that is directed. I've heard from many parents and lots of conversations. Children that do not have rules in the home are not guided by their parents, are very unhappy because they don't know their place. When their parents enforce certain rules and love, those children flourish because they know their boundaries and they're safe. That's God's purpose. He says, stay here and you'll be safe. It's your choice to push up against that. Your choice to say no. I'll do it my way. God will allow you because He didn't design you as a robot. He doesn't manipulate you. He says, here's life, If you want life, come to me. Drink of the living water. If you don't, that is up to you. And then you do come under Torah, which we'll talk about just now. So, how do we define sin? We can go to 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. Most people will say, no, the New Testament advocates a lawless life, or a life without the Torah. John, one of the apostles, has a very different view on this. So if we go to 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. Whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. Here we can see that the disciple, John, advocates that committing, breaking the law, breaking God's commandments is sin. What is sin in the first place? It's a very strange concept. If you think, what is bad and what is good? It's a very strange concept. If you don't have anything to look at, if you just have to make it up for yourself, how do you decide? How do you decide? This is one of the major problems evolutionists have. How do you decide what's morality? What is good? What is evil? I mean, anyone can decide.
They even had that problem in Judges at one point. They said everyone did what was right in their own eyes.
And just what we read now in Isaiah 53. Everyone did what was right, did their own thing. That's why Messiah had to come. To bring the lost sheep back, to bring the ones that strayed, which everyone came for all. But yeah, sin is a strange concept. I thought about it a lot. You see, God defines sin. He says, this is what I don't like. If you do that, that's sin. This is what I like. Follow that, it's righteousness. Obedience. And God's defined that. God's already defined that for us. He says, I wrote a manual for you. Go read what I like, go read what I don't like. It's pretty easy. It's not that difficult. So here John, one of the disciples, we see, he believes firmly. If you don't follow Torah, if you don't keep Torah, if you go against that, it's lawlessness. Lawlessness is sin. It's a plain statement, and I don't see any way around it. If he believes if he believes lawlessness is sin, that means he follows the law. Because else then he's living a life of sin. It's quite simple. John 2 John 1 verse 6. So how do we love God? How do we show that we love our Heavenly Father? Okay? It's an interesting thing because you ask, ordinary Christian, do you love God? I love God. I love Him so much, with all my heart. Do you love God? How do you define it? Because you've got to understand what it means to love God before you say I love Him. When I say I love my wife, I stood at the day we got married. What did that mean? I love you. Well, there was a history that came up to that point. I love you because X, Y, and Z. I love you, and I'll show you I love you how. Well, we've got a marriage covenant. And by me keeping to the marriage covenant, I show my wife I love you. If I say I love you, and then I just go do my own thing, I sleep around, I just don't care what my wife's going to say, and I come to say, I really love you. Or you as a wife say, I really love you, and you go do your own thing, and you come back and say, no, but I really do love you. What does it mean? doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything unless your actions are showing it. And that's why John says this in 2 John chapter 1 verse 6. This is love, that we walk according to his commandments. This is the commandment. It is you have heard from the beginning, you shall walk in it. It's not the commandment after Yeshua came. It's from the beginning. Yeshua came to establish. He came to give the right heart. Because the problem is that when God gave us commandments, it was always an outward show. It was an outward walk. People would try from in their flesh to try follow. And Christ had to come, the Messiah had to come to say, no, it's not about just what you do on the outside, but it's what's on the inside. What is happening here? He has to come give the right heart. And that's, you go read Matthew chapter 5. It talks a lot about that. So I think it's a good time then to go to Mark chapter 7. Guys, also this is interactive. If you've got questions or you want to discuss something, please ask. Yes?
Okay. I've learned something interesting on Thursday while I was preparing for Bible study. And I guess I knew it, but I didn't see it like that. In Torah, if you break your marriage vows and you get a divorce, the wife should not be able to remarry. Am I right? So Israel, being the wife then who committed adultery with the golden calf, it's another reason why Yeshua had to die. God had to come in flesh and die so that everything can be put back together. But also, we had to be made new creations because you can't remarry again according to Torah. So to me that was so amazing that he would go through so much trouble to be with us, to get us right back to where he started with his presence with us. If he really, really wants to be with us, and if he will go through all of that history to actually be with us, how much are we doing to add to it?
There's so much in it. That's at one point. One point of it. We can talk for months on it. It is beautiful. Does everyone know what Torah means? It's sitting there. I don't think everyone knows. Okay, so everyone knows Torah. Okay, when you play darts, what is the point? To win, to get the most marks, and the final thing you have to do is do what? To hit the what? Bullseye. Okay, you want to hit the bullseye. Whenever the further you go, the less, let's say, the less points. Okay, and if you hit off the board, well, fish. But the whole point, Torah, is the point. It's helping you to hit that bullseye. Okay? It's teaching you how to aim. It's about hitting that point. And it's showing you this is truth. Wherever you hit off that bullseye, it's drifting away from. It's drifting from God. And hitting the point is hitting God's heart. That's where his heart lies. Following his word. Being obedient. Seeking his face. So, Mark chapter 7. Alright, I'm just going to read the chapter to keep it in context, and then we'll discuss a few things. Then the Pharisees and some of the scribes came together to him, having come from Jerusalem. Now when they saw some of his disciples eating bread with defiled, that is, with unwashed hands, they found fault. For the Pharisees and the Jews did not eat unless they washed their hands in a special way, holding the traditions of the elders. Okay, so let's just stop there quickly. What was the fault?
They thought it was wrong because they didn't wash their hands all the way up to their elbows.
Okay?
Uncleanness.
So, were they eating something unclean?
No.
Does it mention anywhere here that they were eating something unclean? It says they were eating with unwashed hands. So this is what, when you're reading, you've got to remember the context. You've got to remember what are they talking about, especially the word food. I think that's one of the most important things when you're reading the New Testament. When you read the word food, the context of food for me and the context of food for a Chinese person, the context of food for many different people is very different. When they're talking about food, they're talking about the context of the Jewish nation, what God prescribed as food. So when you read food, you don't think of anything and everything. When I think of food, I don't think of ratics or cyanide or cannibalism, because that is food to some people. For me, no. So we've got to remember that. Okay, so verse 4. When they came from, I think we're in verse 4, yeah. When they came from marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash. And there are many other things which they have received and hold, like the washing of the cups, pitchers, copper vessels, and couches. Then the Pharisees and the scribes asked them, why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands? Did the Pharisees say here, why do your disciples walk or do not walk according to Torah? No. The traditions of the Pharisees. We have to remember that at this time you have the Mishnah, which is the oral tradition, which they believe is equivalent, their law is equivalent to God's. So there's many things in the Mishnah that are not permitted, where the Bible or God's word does not say that is something that you have to keep. Look, is it a bad thing to wash your hands? No, it's a good thing to wash your hands before you eat, and medically we can show that. But to say because you ate without washing your hands, specifically according to their custom, has to be washed 3 times on this side and 3 times on this side. If you don't do that, then whatever you eat is not is unclean. It's absolutely not true. It's not what the word says. God very much cares about cleanliness. That's why in Exodus 19 he says, go wash yourself, make sure you're clean, because I'm coming. Alright? But it's not always just about the outside. He says when you wash, check here. It's always an outward act of what should be happening on the inside. If it's just an outward act, then it's just an outward act. It's not going to be pleasing to the Lord. Yes?
And so in this regard, if that tradition of the elders is performed in that way, it's not wrong.
No, it's not
It's
wrong.
not to self-reflect. But if it becomes the only thing that you're doing, where it's an outward only thing, that's when.
Look, it's like this. We do Bible study, or Vince does a Bible study on Wednesday night. So Vince says now, according to our tradition, if you do not come on Wednesday night, you do not walk according to our way, then you're not saved. Or you're unclean. You're unclean. Is that biblically correct? Can we back it up? No. Is it a good thing to come on Wednesday night? Of course. Of course, it's good to come and read and listen to the Word. But it's wrong to make that equal to Torah and say that's what you have to do. And this is what the Pharisees were doing, time and time again. Verse 6. He answered and said to them, while they desire prophesy of you hypocrites, as it is written, these people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me, and in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrine the commandments of men. So right here, Yeshua hits the point. What is the actual problem? See, here he makes a statement. The heart. Where's your heart? You talk lots about me, but your heart is far from me. And this carries on to what he's going to talk about. The laying aside of the commandments of God to hold the traditions of men, the washing of pitchers and cups and many other such things you do. Now, just before we move on, verse 8, he says, laying aside the commandments of God. Why would Yeshua bring this up if he came to do away with Torah? Why would he even bring it aside? You know, he's busy correcting them, saying, laying aside the commandments of God, the lifting of commandments of men, firmly higher than that. Why would he just say, why are you lifting up your own commandments? Because he never came to do away with Torah in the first place. It's always his base. And once again, he is Torah himself, the living Torah. He said to them, all too well you reject the commandment of God that you may keep your traditions. For Moses said, honor your father and your mother, and he who curses causes father and mother to him be put to death, curses father and mother, let him be put to death. If you say, if a man says to his father or mother, whatever profit you might receive from me is carbon, that is a gift to God, then you no longer let him do anything for his father or his mother, making the word of God of no effect through the traditions which you have handed down, and many such things you do. So basically what he's saying is that instead of looking after your fathers and mothers, your parents at an old age when they can't take care of themselves, you say, sorry, I've got to give this money as a tithe, I've got to give this money to the temple. And they would do it to look good in the eyes of other people, and their parents were hungry at home and had no people to take, no one to take care of them. So Yeshua is saying, why aren't you taking care of your parents? You prefer the praise of man instead of what God says you should be doing. Verse 14. When he had called all the multitude to himself, he said to them, hear me, everyone, and understand. There's nothing that enters a man from outside which can defile him, but the things which come out of him. These are the things that defile a man. If anyone has ear to hear, let him hear. Now, people love using that verse. People love using a verse, and just that verse, and then build a doctrine around that. Firstly, he's not talking about clean and unclean food yet. The disciples aren't eating unclean food. The disciples are following Torah, but the heart of man is the problem. So what Yeshua is saying here, food that goes into you with unwashed hands, or the way that we washed it, it's not going to defile you. It's what comes out of your heart. There's going to be a testimony against you. Because many things not said are, God sees the heart. He sees the things that are happening inside, where we maybe not say to people, physically say it, but we're thinking it. And that's why in Matthew chapter 5, Yeshua talks a lot about if you think it, it's sin. If you're angry at your brother, it's like murder. If you think of lust, it's like doing adultery. It's attacking your core, what is inside.
But hang on. All of us do get angry. Your child goes and breaks whatever, and as a parent you're angry. Is that simple?
That's very different to saying, I want to kill you from the inside. You're looking at a person with hatred. That's sin. If God gets angry, but it's righteous in the way. He doesn't just strike everyone down dead because he's angry. It's a righteous anger because his children are hurting themselves, and he wants to correct it. You as a parent see what your child doing something wrong. It's not that you're angry that you hate them. It's that you're angry that they're hurting themselves, and you can see it, but they can't.
So, and if somebody is doing something really mean and foul and really, really hurting you, and you are feeling not hate but anger towards this person, are you then committing sin?
There's a very big difference. If you look at like Nehemiah and you look at the prophets, they were angry at the people. because they continually disobeyed. They continually went after the gods of the Canaanites, the gods of the people that took over, that Israel had conquered. They continually went after the prophets were angry, but they did not sin in their anger. Sorry, was a question?
I think it becomes sin when that anger becomes business. Like you get angry and then you forgive that person. It's fine, but then it's going to become sin if it festers and becomes business.
To confirm Rachel's verse, sorry, Adrian. Ephesians 4 verse 26 says, "Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil."
So
So-
how do you process that anger?
Yeah.
You sit down and take a deep breath, calm yourself, and then you go and you go out and punch them.
Yeah. I think, it comes down to your heart attitude. It's alright to be angry when it's a righteous, almost like a righteous anger. That you're angry at people that aren't doing the right thing. I'm angry at the government. I'm angry at a lot of things that happen in this country. But doesn't mean I must hate the individual person. I must be angry at the act, not at the person, the sin.
Proverbs is a good example. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Discipline the child, but don't use it as a license for abuse. Yeah.
What we talked about a few weeks ago is, in your anger, do not sin. So it's okay to be angry, but then there comes a time when you have to take this anger to God and you're going to have to forgive. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to think about it for a lot of time, and there's only going to be that much time before this is going to start festering, and it's going to become more than that, and it's going to actually have an influence on how you treat that person. So, yeah, it's okay to be angry for a while, I guess, but the scripture says, before you go to bed, you must try and sort this out.
Yeah.
But if you can't, you take it to God. But don't think about it all the time, because just like Vince always says, how long before you're going to steal the car, you keep looking at how wonderful and beautiful it is. So don't keep it up there, and don't let it go down into your heart.
Guys, I know sometimes we get people that don't really understand what they're doing, all right? I think our frustration comes in is when the world acts like the world and you have the light switched on and you see it for the way God sees it and you can't understand why they don't see it that way. But we need to understand, the world is the blind walking around trying to do things, and we're frustrated because they bump things. You put a precious vase over there and you say, "Watch this, be careful, it's something beautiful." And he walks around stumbling and he knocks it over, and then you're frustrated because they didn't see it. People in the world especially act out what they know. And you see the way God wants you to respond. You have to act in accordance to what you know. What did Yeshua say about those who persecute you? What about those who hurt you? What about those who are the enemies? He says, bless them, pray for them, because they really don't understand. They don't see what they're doing. How many times, think to your youth, how many times did you say something sharp to your parents, and now only when you have kids, or on the other side of that you went, you realized how ungrateful you were at that point, because you didn't understand what they sacrificed to get you to where you were. It's that sort of shift. There's times when we just have to put ourselves into their shoes. There's times that we might not understand their response. Yes, it might hurt you and it might not be nice, but they're doing it because they think it's the right thing to do. Generally speaking, people are following a chain of action according to what they understand. The problem is, if you only understand the world, you're going to act like that. You understand God, you should act like Him. So just that process of, yes, it's not nice. Yes, you get hurt. Yes, you get frustrated. Yes, you get annoyed. You want to do something about it that's constructive? Pray for them. Let God change the government. Let God change that person's heart. Let God save those people so that they won't do that to anybody else. Alright?
Alright, so coming back to Mark chapter 7, do we all see that Yeshua is not advocating to eat unclean? That's not what the context was about or the point of the discussion. The point was, what is in your heart?
Oh, sorry. Verse 19. Yeah, the brackets is less than the
Yeah, in some Bibles. In some Bibles, you'll see in verse 19 of chapter 7 will say, verse 19,
Yeah, in mine.
will say, thus he declared all foods clean. That was added.
Yeah, and it's added by translator in 1926 by the name of Nestle.
So yeah, you will see in some Bibles it's got it there. That is not the word that was added, and that's why it's normally in italics or in brackets, showing that it's an addition. Because people want to see what they want to see. And they want to justify why they do what they do. Acts chapter 10. I'm getting it. It's good to see that I get that correct. Trying to put something.
Verse?
From the beginning. Context. Okay, Acts chapter 10 is a very good one also to show, look, the disciples didn't keep Torah. Look, God said it's okay. He decided to change his mind. God doesn't change his mind. The word is very clear on that. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. If Yeshua is God and God is Yeshua, one and Echad, different function, that are in unity with the plan and purposes, then we cannot say that Yeshua is against his Father and Father against Yeshua, and they change their mind. A house, that's why Yeshua says, a house divided cannot stand. They must agree. So context is so important. Okay, so Acts chapter 10. There was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of what was called the Italian regiment, a devout man and one who feared God with all his household, who gave alms generously to the people and prayed to God always. About the 9th hour of the day, he saw clearly in a vision an angel of God coming in and saying to him, Cornelius. Just this topic. Is this a man that loves God? We read earlier, to love God is to keep his commandments. Alright? So, I think we can safely say this guy was keeping God's commandments and teaching his household to do likewise. This isn't a guy that is living a reprobate life like the Romans and so on. He is following the Torah. Also interesting here, God's, it says that in the 9th hour, which is time of prayer. They pray the 3rd, the 9th.
It's the midnight, it's the morning, the evening, and then it's afternoon.
Okay, so the morning prayers, angel, is it the morning prayers?
I think it's Monday, but I think that's afternoon.
Okay. So here an angel meets him specifically at that time. Okay, so verse 4. Am I in verse 4?
Yeah.
And when he observed him, he was afraid and said, What is it, Lord? So he said to him, Your prayers and your alms have come up for a memorial before God. Now send men to Joppa and send for Simon, whose surname is Peter. He is lodged with Simon, the tanner, whose house is by the sea. He will tell you what you must do. And when the angel who spoke to him had departed, Cornelius called 2 of his household servants and a devout soldier from among those who waited on him continually. So when he had explained all these things to them, he sent them to Joppa. The next day, as they went on their journey and drew near the city, Peter went up on the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. Then he became very hungry and wanted to eat. But while they made ready, he fell into a trance This isn't like a, rave trance, alright? This is like God giving him a vision, and that's what he was focused on. Okay, then he became very hungry and wanted to eat, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance and saw heaven open and an object like a great sheet bound at the four corners descending to him and let down to the earth. In it were all kinds of four-footed animals of the earth, wild beasts, creeping things, and birds of the air. And a voice came to him, "Raise Peter, kill and eat." But Peter said, "Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything common or unclean." And the voice spoke to him again the second time, "What God has cleansed, you must not call common." Let's just stop there a little bit. What God has cleansed, you must not call common. Now people will use this and say, God has made everything clean, you can eat. And they'll stop there, not continuing to read the chapter. Firstly, they'll probably go from here and say, look, Mark chapter 7, God made everything clean. Once again, he was not talking about meat, so we have to be very careful. Also, he sees this big sheep coming down, full of animals. Now there's context to that. Peter understands this. They're living by a port where fishermen are coming in and out of their boats, and the way they would offload their fish is they would put the fish, because you've got the mast and you've got your sail, they would load the fish into the sail, and then they would pull it over and they could offload the fish. So it's like a big white sheet. Alright? So they found coins like that.
Merchandise, not just fish.
So yeah, whatever they had merchandise aside, they would offload. So he understands this method of transporting or offloading something. Verse 16. This was done 3 times. Remember, numbers always mean something. And the object was taken up into heaven again. Now while Peter wondered within himself what this vision which he had seen meant, behold, the men who had been sent from Cornelius had made inquiry for Simon's house and stood before the gate. And they called and asked whether Simon whose surname was Peter, was lodging there. While Peter thought about this vision, the Spirit said to him, "Behold, 3 men are seeking you. Arise, therefore, go down and go with them, doubting nothing, for I have sent them." Okay, God gives him this vision 3 times. 3 men appear at the door. 3 meaning completion, for God's perfect will. Also, something we must remember, the Jewish people will not entertain Gentiles. They will not eat with them, and then they believe it to be unclean. Here, God gives him a vision, comes down 3 times of unclean stuff, unclean food, and then 3 unclean men. After God said, "What I've made clean, do not call unclean," he's got 3 men standing at the door. And Peter starts understanding what this is about. Because he's pondering, the Spirit saying to him, "Go with it." Verse 21. Then Peter went down to the men who had been sent to him from Cornelius and said, "Yes, I am he whom you seek. For what reason have you come?" And they said, "Cornelius, a centurion, a just man, one who fears God and has a good reputation among all the nation of the Jews, was divinely instructed by the holy angel to summon you to his house and to hear words from you." Then he invited them in and lodged them. On the next day, Peter went away with them, and some brethren from Joppa accompanied him. And the following day, they entered Caesarea. Now Cornelius was waiting for them and had called together his relatives and close friends. As Peter was coming in, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshipped him. But Peter lifted up, saying, stand up, I myself am also a man. And as he talked with them, he went in and found many who had come together. Then he said to them, you know how unlawful it is for a Jewish man to keep company with or go to one of another nation, where God has shown me that I should not call any man common one to you. See, God had to prepare Peter, and he used what they understood at the time to bring these people together. Here, Peter doesn't carry on and talk about how God's made all things unclean, clean, and you can eat them and so on. He knows the interpretation. He knows that God is specifically talking about the Gentile nations that the Jewish people believe to be unclean and should have no part of. But this wasn't the plan of God. God's plan of salvation was to all people. And he needed the Jewish people to understand this because they're the ones that had the truth. They're the ones that were the teachers. They're the ones that they're the ones that were supposed to be the light of the world. That's what God placed them in the Word in Israel. And he needed to realign this thinking. And I believe God used this. I believe God used Peter specifically because he had a big problem with this. If you read in Galatians, Paul actually says, I stood face to face with Peter on the same issue again. Because when Paul comes, what's Peter doing? When Jewish people came, where Peter was, he would stop eating with the Gentiles. He would basically, no, I don't eat with those people and so on, and he'd act indifferent to them. And Paul's saying, why are you doing this? God has made him clean. See, Peter had a problem. And that's what God used him specifically here. So we see here God is talking about people, not about food. Specifically, and he's using the context of what they understand. And that's why when we read, we have to understand the context. It's not just in a vacuum. There's a context to it. Alright, I think we've got a bit of time. We go to, let's try fit it in, Acts 15. Before going to Acts 15, why would God say you can eat some meat and not eat some meat? Like you shouldn't eat, you can't eat pork, you can't eat shellfish or shellfish. You can't eat things like the specific criteria to what you can eat. For instance, birds of prey and so on.
Make your own king, and you're a vessel of his.
But why would they make him king? Why did God say in the first place not to eat those things? You can eat a cow, but you can't eat a pig.
Maybe it's physically bad.
It's physical and spiritual. It's physically bad, you like Mark says, and then spiritually, at the same when you go to temple and make you very weak spiritually as well. Like, but essential food. They taste great, but they do something to the spiritual side, where they go to the spiritual
But
side.
okay, I agree to some points. I believe God wants to distinguish. It's about obedience. But there is a point to it.
Say pork as a basic example. I used to like my pork chops. I used to. What they found with pigs was if a snake, always the snake had to bite the pig would be fine, go along his business, and the poison would settle into the fat of the pig. And the pig, if you watch how a pig eats, it's like you see that's what you don't want to watch that. It's got to do with a health reason for many cases.
If we look at these type of animals, it's only now that scientists start to understand what God told them 3,500 years ago, something like that. Pig is an easy one to use, because I think that's the main one that people battle with. Firstly, pigs don't sweat. The main way people and animals get rid of toxins is through sweat glands. Pigs don't sweat. So the toxins settle in the fat. Also, pigs have the shortest digestion time, one of the shortest digestion times.
2 to 3 hours.
Around 4 hours, they digest it. It doesn't give enough time for the body to get rid of the toxins. So those toxins are in the meat. Also, they carry a lot of parasites. We do a lot of research into it. So many different types of worms, and my dad can talk a lot about it. Things like worms that get in the brain, eat the brain, a whole lot of stuff. Even cooking it properly, some of the parasites you can't kill. And if I went to you and I pulled off a piece of rubber, tire rubber that's like on the road, eat this. It's good, you're going to do it. It doesn't matter how good it tastes. You're going to be like, okay. Those things aren't designed to eat. We can argue the fact, should we eat any meat? Originally God designed it, that we didn't. He designed a world that there wouldn't be death. But I believe after the flood, there wasn't probably sufficient food, and that was one of the reasons God permitted certain animals that were healthy or healthier to eat. So we have to look at why God's saying these things. About obedience, but very practical. If you eat these kind of animals, also the type of animals God tells you not to eat, or normally all animals that are carnivorous, they eat meat, they eat anything like pigs or meat, and they're bottom feeders. They used to use pigs to follow the camp because they would eat feces and all of that. That's what they would use them. So as the camp moves, the pigs would clean up after them, keep the area clean.
They eat other pigs too.
Eat other pigs. Even it's been reported that farmers have gone missing because their pigs ate them. So you've got to be very shellfish, and then also eat all the feces of the ocean and so on. They're the cleaners. They clean the vacuum. Not good to eat this stuff. I mean, you don't go to the toilet and then turn around and think, let's have dinner for the second time. It's
Shots fired.
not a good idea. Yes, don't eat it. Don't eat out the dustbin. Okay, let's get on to yes.
There's also one other practice that was in Exodus, and that was don't eat a kid. This isn't talking about a human kid, by the way. It's talking about lamb kids. Boil it into mother's milk because that wasn't necessarily unhealthy. It was a fertility practice. It said don't be like them.
Yes. But also, what's interesting is eating meat, and they've actually showed Jewish people that keep the kosher laws, don't eat meat and dairy at the same time are more healthy and less cholesterol. Because eating meat and dairy, cheese and that at the same time, the body struggles to break down the fats and so on. So you actually get more cholesterol. So it is an interesting factor.
Sorry, but then where do I draw the line? So I don't put mayonnaise on my chicken because...
Sorry, you know what?
So where do I draw the line? I don't put mayonnaise on my chicken because mayonnaise comes from egg and chicken.
No, I never said that's Torah. I said
I'm
that
just
is-
asking me, would we do that? Would we not do that?
Well, you can do it if you want. It's not, like I said, it's not God hasn't permitted.
Don't hate mayonnaise for no apparent reason.
No, you can ask, should you be eating mayonnaise?
Depends on how healthy you are.
Probably not the healthiest thing to eat, but
So I would come.
Good night, cheeseburgers.
okay, we've got a few minutes. I just want to...
Sorry, would ostrich fall under this as well, not to eat it because it's a bird?
Ostrich is one of those funny, it's one of the funny words in Hebrew. We're not exactly sure if it is 100% the ostrich that we know. Some translations will say screech owl or eagle owl, if I remember correctly, or osprey. Generally, it's, if you look at the list, they either scavenger birds or birds that eat carrion, or they predatory birds, right? So ostrich is a bit of a conundrum because it's not really any of those that that we found, or any other thing that eats, that scavengers or fish or anything like that. But because we don't know 100% sure, we stay away from it anyway.
You said ostriches have been shown that
snakes and rats.
Why should you eat anything?
Okay, well, maybe that's possible, but like I said, the actual word translation, we're not sure.
Something just to be safe.
Yeah, stay away from it.
All right, we're going to stop here. Does that bring some clarity on some of those verses? I hope it does. Is there any questions? Right, shall we pray?